Yo, welcome back to Eat, Sleep, Breathe, Hoops with your boy, Nikki P. Y'all know what time it is, man. Look, there's no worse feeling in the NBA than being mid. Y'all know the feeling. It's late April, the playoffs are on, but your team is sitting at home. You didn't suck enough to get a top 5 lottery pick, but you weren't good enough to make any real noise. You won about 38, 40 games, you're picking 11th in the draft, you're stuck on the hamster wheel of mediocrity. For years, the solution has been the same. Tank, lose on purpose, get a superstar in the lottery. But what if I told you there was another way? What if you didn't need to bottom out for 5 years to become a contender? Today, we're looking at the OKC Thunder blueprint. The Thunder just went from a rebuilding team to the best record in the Western Conference without a single traditional tank job in the rearview mirror. Yes, they had lottery luck, but they also had built a contender by unearthing diamonds in the rough, manipulating the salary cap, and acquiring players that other teams gave up on. If you're a fan of a team stuck in the 7 to 10 seed range, the Bulls, the Hawks, the Jazz, I need you to listen up, because this is your guide out of purgatory. Let's jump into it. First, we have to address the elephant in the room. Everyone thinks you need a top 3 pick to win. And look, it does help. The Celtics had Tatum, who went 3 overall. The Bucks had Giannis, 15th pick. Oops. The Warriors had Curry, who was a 7th pick. The Nuggets had Jokic, the 41st pick. Double oops. The point is, while having a high pick is great, you don't win titles just because you were bad at the right time. You win titles because you have a front office that can identify talent at every level of the draft and in every corner of the league. The Thunder understood this. They didn't just rebuild through the lottery, they rebuilt through intentionality. After they traded Paul George and Russell Westbrook, they accumulated a ton of picks. But here's the key. They didn't just wait for those picks to turn into stars. They actively built a winning culture while waiting for their young guys to develop. Let's look at the 3 pillars of the blueprint. Pillar number 1, finding Dort, undrafted and two-way gold. Our first pillar is the undrafted free agent with the 2-way contract, the guy who was overlooked by everybody. When you think of the Thunder, you think of Shai gilgeous-alexander, you think of Chet Holmgren, but the heart and soul of the team, that boy Lou Dort. Dort went undrafted in 2019. Not a single team thought he was worth a pick. The Thunder signed him to a 2-way contract, and by the 2020 playoffs, he was guarding LeBron James in a bubble series and making life hell for him. How did they do it? They looked past the stats. That's why I keep reiterating that you got to turn on the film and know what you're looking at. Dort at Arizona State wasn't a scorer. He shot 30% from 3, but he was 6'3" with a 6'9" wingspan and weighed 220. Built like a football player, like a tank. He had the physical tools to be a lockdown defender, and he had the mentality. The Thunder didn't draft him. They didn't trade for him. They simply gave him a chance and developed him. If you're the Bulls or the Hawks, you can't afford to let these guys slip through your fingers while you're busy playing a mid-level exception to a veteran who doesn't move the needle. The Thunder are scouring the summer league for guys with elite physical tools who just haven't quite figured it all out yet. The Thunder system is designed to find players who other teams overlook because they can't shoot or because they're raw. They bet on the body and the brain, and they teach the skill. Pillar 2, the J-Dub heist, draft and disguise stars. Now let's talk about the draft, and specifically let's talk about Jaylen Williams, or as they call him, J-Dub. In the 2022 draft, Jaylen Williams was a relatively unknown dude. He played at Santa Clara, he averaged 18 a game, but he was a junior. He was 21. In the eyes of many teams, that meant he had a low ceiling. But the Thunder saw something else. They looked past the college senior label and looked at the translators we talked about in our last video. The length, he measured a 7'2" wingspan. That's absurd for a 6'5" dude. Versatility, he shot nearly 40% from 3, but he also had a 2.2% steal rate and a 5% block rate, numbers that scream 2-way potential. He played point guard at Santa Clara. He knew how to run an offense. The Thunder traded up to get him at 12, and now he's an all-star caliber player. He's a perfect example of not drafting for need, but drafting for skill. If you're picking in the middle of the first round, where mid-teams usually tend to pick, you can't afford to reach for a safe senior who fits a role. You have to swing on a guy with the outlier physical traits. The Kings drafted Davion Mitchell because he was a win-now defender. The Thunder drafted Jaylen Williams because he had the wingspan of a power forward and the handle of a point guard. One of those players is a role player. The other is a star. If you're mid, you have to find the J-Dubs. You have to find the player whose college stats don't pop, but whose body and skill set scream NBA starter. Pillar 3, the cap manipulation, getting paid to take players. This is the part that most fans don't understand, but it's the secret sauce of the Thunder's rebuild. The Thunder have been bad, but they've been strategically bad. They've used their cap space as a weapon. Let me explain. When a contender has a bad contract they want to get rid of, say, a player making $20 million who isn't playing, they have to attach a draft pick to get rid of him. Usually they have to trade him to a team with cap space. For the last 3 years, the Thunder have been that team. They raised their hand and said, hey, we'll take your garbage if you give us a pick. They took on Kemba Walker's contract from the Celtics and got a first-round pick out of it. They took on Derek Favors' contract and got a pick. They essentially got paid to be bad. This is where the mid-teams fail. Teams like the Bulls are always trying to be competitive. They're never bad enough to have a max cap space, and they're never good enough to contend. They're stuck in the middle, using their cap space to sign mediocre veterans to mediocre contracts. The Thunder use their cap space to acquire assets. They understood that being bad with a purpose is better than being mediocre with no direction. If you're a fan of a mid-team, you have to ask your front office, hey, are you using your cap space to buy picks and take a chance on young players? Or are you using it to sign the 30-year-old role player who will help you win maybe 38, 40 games? Now let's take a look at the centerpiece, SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. People look at the Thunder now and say, well, they got lucky. They got an MVP candidate in the draft. But here's the thing, the Thunder didn't draft Shai. They traded for him when he was a role player on the Clippers. And more importantly, they were patient. When they got Shai, he was good, but he wasn't this. He averaged about 10 points as a rookie. He averaged 19 in his first year in OKC. They could have traded him for a veteran. They could have rushed the process, but they didn't. They let him develop. They let him struggle. They let him figure out how to be the man. This is the hardest part of the blueprint for mid-teams. Because if you're the Bulls back when you had Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan, good, really good players, but they weren't Shai. And instead of trading them for picks and young players, you hold on, hoping to sneak into the playoffs. The Thunder were willing to take a step back to take 2 steps forward. They traded Paul George when his value was at its peak. They traded Russell Westbrook, the heart and soul of the Thunder. They made the hard, unpopular decisions. You have to be honest about your roster. Is your best player a top 10 player in the league? If the answer is no, you have to be willing to trade him for assets before it's too late. The Thunder turned Paul George into Shai, Jaylen Williams, and a treasure chest of picks. What could your mid-teams get from their star? So let's look at the Thunder roster right now and see how the blueprint came together. You got SGA, acquired via trade for a disgruntled star in Paul George. Chet Holmgren, acquired via their own lottery pick. Yes, they were bad, but they only had one true tank year. Jaylen Williams, drafted 12th overall by identifying outlier physical tools. Lou Dort, undrafted free agent, signed to a 2-way deal initially. Cason Wallace, drafted 10th overall using the pick they acquired by taking on a bad contract, the Kemba Walker pick. You see it? Every single player on that roster was acquired through a different method of strategic thinking and planning. They didn't just lose games and hope for the best. They were active participants in their own rebuild. So, to the fans of the mid-teams watching this, the fans struggling and right on the cusp of those play-in games now. You know what I'm talking about. Y'all know who you are. I got a message for y'all. Y'all got to be tired of being aggressively mediocre. You don't have to tank for 5 players, but you do have to be smart. You have to find the undrafted guys like Dort. You have to find Jaylen Williams in the middle of the first round. You got to use your cap space to buy picks and not just sign bets. And most importantly, you have to be honest about your stars. The Thunder showed us the way. They showed us that you could rebuild without completely bottoming out. You just have to have a plan. The question is, does your front office have one? Comment, hop in that like section. Let me know what y'all think. What's y'all favorite teams? If y'all in that mid section, speak up. Let me know what you think about your front office with the moves they making, the planning and strategizing they're doing. Let me holler at me. Let's talk it up. Let's chop it up about it. And you know who it is. It's your boy Nicky P. And this is Eat, Sleep, Breathe, Hoops. And which mid-teams do y'all think is closest to following the Thunder blueprint? Who's next in line to follow that path to victory and championships? Let me know. Holla at your boy. Eat, sleep, breathe, hoops. And you know, until the next time, peace.